Hello and welcome. My name is Tom. This is the Enthusiasm Project, Season 3, Episode 18. And to celebrate that milestone, I have an incredibly special guest today. It's not just me rambling by myself in the room as per usual. I've got someone I'm super excited to have as a part of the podcast, and I've been on her podcast. Heather has been on her podcast. Also, other incredible people like Gerald Undone have been on her podcast. And I just want to kind of pick the brain of a creator that I admire a lot. So today, my guest is Bhav Sharma from the Creators Campfire podcast. Welcome.
Hello. That was an incredibly nice introduction.
I practiced it so many times, but it's easy because I'm so excited that you're here and I admire what you're doing. And most importantly, my goal with this episode, and I think you can relate to this, is I think that after hearing you, people will be motivated to want to go out and make something. So if there's somebody who's already making something, if they haven't started yet, I think they can kind of hear what you do, who you are, why you're doing it, and then go like, yeah, I should go make something right now. That's the goal.
That would be amazing because, guys, if I can do it, literally anybody can do it. I promise you.
My other goal is to really like heap praise upon you because I don't think you give yourself enough credit for how good you are at what you do. So let's also do that. Not that we want to have like a big ego or anything.
I was going to say, my head may explode.
Yeah, we don't want that.
We don't want that.
So before we dive into content creation and YouTube and podcasting and all that stuff, who the heck are you? And what do you do in your day-to-day life outside of the world of YouTube?
So who am I? I am awkward. And I am officially a data analyst. By day, I work for a company called Avon and have actually been there for 10 years now. Yeah, I know, crazy. I joined them straight after uni. I'm officially an accountant, but saw the error of my ways. Didn't quite move completely out of numbers, though. And I've already forgotten the second part of your question.
That's literally it. Who are you and what do you do?
Excellent. That was good. It's very strange being on the other side.
I know, because you're used to doing the interviews and you're really good at it, by the way. But the reason I wanted to start with that, other than just providing context for, who you are, is because you aren't full-time content creator. I'm not full-time content creator. And most people who listen to the show aren't either. But I'm always so fascinated by people who create something and are able to kind of wedge it into their lives. And I think there's just so much to learn from that in so many different ways. So let's kind of dive into that. You have a podcast, which is also on YouTube, but it's also on all the podcast platforms.
Yes.
And it's called Creators Campfire.
It is. Yes.
So tell me everything I would want to know about Creators Campfire, what it is, why you started it, when you started it. You're deep into season 2 right now.
Yeah, I know, it's insane. Actually, just going back to your point, I one of the things I really liked about you as well is that you are part-time. Like that whole being able to do it on the side and manage your full-time job is just like, wow. And I did think, like looking at you, I was like, clearly it is possible to have production value, a great channel, and have a job. So definite inspiration there.
Well, thank you. It's tricky, but it's possible.
Yes. It is definitely something that needs to be handled well, is what I've realized. So I guess if we take it back to the start, I started at the beginning. I say the beginning of lockdown. Actually, I checked. It was about mid-May I started. And I think I actually, between having the idea and deciding I was going to do it and having my first guest and being live, was probably about 4 days.
I love that.
Which is insane for me.
I know, but me too. That's why I appreciate that kind of thing. Just, okay, get the idea and go for it. Because you can marinate on an idea for months or years. And the taking action part is just so big. So you started in May. I didn't even realize, honestly, it was that soon. I kind of thought it was like, I have your channel up here and I was going through like videos, oldest to newest. And I was like, 6 months ago? Crazy. Yeah. So why did you want to start in May? What the heck is it? And
yeah. Okay. Yes. Good point. What is it? It is a show where I interview other creators. And it kind of started a bit more broad because I had no idea really going in what I wanted out of it. I just knew I wanted to do something. So I literally I would speak to anyone who was in that creative field. Again, like you, preferably someone who was doing the side hustle thing, someone who had a full-time job but wanted something on the side. Not a traditional just job. So I almost reached out to anybody that would listen to me and read my message and said, hey, do you want to come on? I don't really have a plan, but I know I want to do something and I know I want to talk to some people and try and kick this off. And surprisingly, people said yes. And I was blown away. And I was like, awesome, let's do this. Kind of looking back, I wish I maybe had a plan. But there you go. Couldn't stop to think about it. It was just a case of getting on with it. But yeah, it was anyone creative. And in terms of where the idea came from, I ended up binging Gary Vee for probably a month. And before lockdown, I hadn't really heard of him. I don't even think I knew who he was.
Yeah, interesting. Heather's a big fan. And like, I've absorbed through osmosis like a significant chunk.
Yes. So I think at the start of lockdown or very early on, he started something called Tea with Gary Vee, which may have been like a next step of something he already had. I'm not sure. I'm not hardcore, guys, so I'm very sorry. But I think it just happened to coincide. It was almost like it was meant to be. So every day he'd have a 2-hour show or something. So I'd grab my lunch. I didn't have a 2-hour lunch. I was just listening to it twice as fast, just in case anyone's listening. But I would just listen to that every day. And there was just a lot of the things I was worried about, procrastinating, perfectionism, worrying about what other people think. He was literally like, who cares? And I think if you listen to that message enough without any negativity, it was just so positive. And he had people coming on the show and talking about their stuff. And I was like, damn, why can't I do it? Like, literally, there is nothing stopping me but me. So get on with it.
Gary's such an interesting figure because I think like over the years, his message can sometimes be misinterpreted. And I think there's people who sort of take it to these extremes. But it really, like you said, focusing on the positive part, a lot of what he's telling people to do is to get out of your own way. And whatever that means is up to you. If that means, working 20 hours a day, every day a week, cool. If that means doing something 3 hours a week, cool. But like get out of your own way and just get started to make the thing that you want to make, which, that's such an important message. It's one that resonates with me. And, clearly it resonates with people all over the world as well. So now you've got your show going, you started interviewing people, and you do it live. It's not just a recorded podcast.
Yes, I do it live. This was just because I'm lazy.
So you do a live video podcast because of laziness.
Yes. My thought process was, yeah, okay, let's go down the podcast route. But those podcasts sound great, right? They're like production level is good. I know nothing about audio. What are the logistics going to be? I want to interview people. It's not like I'm sitting there with just a mic. That would be one thing, but remote people, and also the people I'm talking to won't necessarily have super duper equipment. They're just, someone like me. So how do I do this? And also I want routine. I want to make sure it's consistent because otherwise it's very easy to, let go. So that consistency and that kind of commitment to it. And again, Gary Vee, they were using StreamYard to stream their Tea with Gary Vee. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty straightforward.
Super simple.
I didn't have to think about anything. And I was like, all right, let's do this. No editing. That sounds like the dream.
Oh, I get it with this show right here. Yeah. Because especially like YouTube videos, it's all edited and then you can just let things breathe. And, there are obviously very highly polished and produced podcasts out there with tons of editing, but I like to take the simple route as well.
Yes, 100%. There's a Tim Ferriss question. So what he asks himself is, what does this look like if it were easy? And this is something I try and ask a lot, especially when you're procrastinating or thinking about things. It's like, and I'm very much someone who will overcomplicate something very, very quickly. I literally just said, what would this look like if it was easy? And I was like, live stream it, no editing, get someone on and just talk.
I've never heard that question, but that I love that. I do a thing which I was actually planning to do a whole episode of this show about called the $1 million question, which I stole from a co-teacher or a colleague of mine, where it's, students are kind of lazy sometimes, and you'll be asking them to do something that seems pretty basic, or it's like a little bit of work for a huge payoff, and sometimes they still don't do it. And so he's always asking him, look, if I were going to give you $1 million to turn this thing in by Friday or whatever, would you do it? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. It's like, okay, so it's not a matter of possible, it's a matter of motivation. And I ask myself that a lot, because there's things where clearly, you're like, if I give you $1 million to go to the moon by next weekend, you'd be like, that I'm not going to do that. It's not possible. But you can kind of use it as a good guide of, okay, like, am I getting in my own way here? But I like what would this look like if it's easy? Because that really does, that takes the whole, what do other people do and what do other people think? That seems like it would get rid of that and just let you go.
Yes, completely. It just takes every obstacle out the way. It's like, okay, well, if you still can't do it, then there's something else going wrong here. Like, you really, really don't want to do it. So it just takes all that worry and complication out.
So, okay, let's stick with your podcast for a while, because I'm so interested in it. Because first of all, I have to just compliment you on the branding and the marketing and the name. It's one of those things where I was like, how has this not been taken 10 years ago? Like, Creators Campfire is just so perfect. So congratulations.
Thank you.
On that.
My head is exploding again.
Well, why did you come up with that name? Because when you hear a name of something, it obviously inspires, like, people get attached to it. People have preconceived notions to a name. So why did you choose that name for the show that you wanted to do?
Yes. Okay. So can't actually take credit. It was, this is going to come up a lot. Gary V, when he was talking on, you'll see the theme. When he was talking on his, on this team with Gary V, and he was having conversations with people, and people were like, oh, but it's locked down and I don't know what to do content wise. I can't sell anything. It doesn't seem like the right thing. And he was like, guys, now's the time to tell stories. Now's the time to almost sit around the campfire and just talk to each other. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give those guys a platform to tell their stories. I don't have one to tell. So let me do that. Creators Campfire had a nice bit of alliteration. I'm glad you said you like it, because I still to this day, I'm like, oh, I'm not sure about it.
Well, I mean, it's your show. So if you wanted to change it, I would support you. But I love it. I think it's a great, because it's, as a creator, and maybe this even played a role in it. I mean, when you first contacted me, I don't know when that was, last summer at some point, about being on your show. I mean, one, like, just the way, I would love to talk about this and in a few minutes, like how you reach out to people and the approach, because you're really good at it. It's really good at being organized. Lots of people ask to be on different shows, and there's something to the way that you're doing it, but also, like, the name, like, it invokes something. Like, Heather has gone to VidCon 3 times. I think 3 times. I've gone once. Obviously, we didn't go this year because COVID happened, but last year we went to VidCon. I was so excited, but I will be honest, I was a little let down. I don't know if you're familiar with VidCon or not, but it's the big YouTube, like, convention in the Anaheim, Orange County area in Southern California. It's like right by Disneyland. Right. And it's right across the street from Disneyland. And there's tens of thousands of people there. And it's, it's been going on for years, and it is a lot of fun, but over the past few years, from what I gather, it has shifted to being really fan focused. So it's less about, like, let's talk about the things we're making, and more like, go get a selfie with your favorite creator. And there's just middle school kids and teenagers everywhere. And, you can get a pass that's going to let you kind of go up on the higher level floors, and there'll be a seminar about marketing or gender equality on the platform or something. But it's very, like, fan based. And I was a little let down because I wanted to literally sit down with other people who, regardless of their niche or, like, audience size or anything, but they just sort of get it. They understand, like, the just getting started, the successes, the challenges, and that just wasn't there. And your show, like, fit that, it scratched that itch so perfectly. And I think that a lot of people want that. And I think that it's great to hear the conversations. It was great to be a part of it. And every week it's something to look forward to, so I'm definitely giving a recommendation. Even if you're not familiar with a guest one week, just watch anyway, or rewatch the stream, because you're going to get something out of the conversation. But I think there's such a value-filled area for that kind of content?
I think I might cry before this episode is out.
Cool. New goal number 3 for this
in a good way.
episode.
Just to be clear. That is genuinely amazing to hear, because even now that I've kind of refined it slightly, that I feel like season 2, I know a bit more of what I'm doing. I still wasn't sure that, people would want to tune in. Like, unless somebody they knew was on the episode, I was like, what are people actually getting out of this? So to hear that someone like yourself actually A, looks forward to it, and B, just even tunes in is mind-blowing.
I mean, you've got, I tried to count it. I think it was about 30 episodes of the podcast total across both seasons.
Yes, Heather was number 30.
Heather was number 30. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if I miscounted. But I think like the more that you keep doing it, eventually people will be tuning in for you specifically to see how you're going to interact with this person and how you're going to, I mean, it's not so much, they want to see you lead the conversation. And that might start with a small group, but then it gets to a bigger group and bigger group. And that's just a really exciting thing. And I feel like the foundation is already there, because you've already, so many people are like, I want to make my YouTube video, I want to do my podcast, and they get 2 or 3 episodes in and they're like, oh, why is it not growing? And you're like, I'm 30 episodes and 6 months in, and like you had to have learned some pretty valuable lessons in that time and with that much work and that much time. So do you have any like key, whether it's personal growth or creator things, like key lessons that you've learned, even if it's a very like nuts and bolts, don't forget to click this button on something or whatever, like very important lessons that might be helpful to someone?
Yes. Okay. So actually, I was thinking about this, and I may have mentioned it to someone like a couple of weeks ago. It's like one of those things that you don't, because you're doing it every week, you don't necessarily, you yourself don't see that growth. It's like when kids are growing up, but you see them every day, you don't see it. Whereas if you haven't seen someone for, 3 months, it's like, oh, you've changed this much. So I guess somebody tuning into an episode 1 versus an episode 30 is probably going to see that. Me, on the other hand, I'm like, I'm just doing the same thing I was doing, 6 months ago. What are you talking about? But clearly there has been growth. Otherwise, yeah, I'd be worried.
Yeah, it's so funny when you go back and like watch your old video, because there'll be something where you're like, I'm just so proud of this. And then you go back and watch it a few months later and you're like, what was I doing? Uh-huh. And then other people will leave a comment or message you like, that's so great. And you're like, please don't watch that. Like,
yes, want to take it down.
And I think that that's a normal thing, but I guess that's good, because if you were like, the best thing I ever did was the first thing and now I'm done.
That would be bad. That would be very bad, yes. So I guess I have probably, in terms of organization, because that's just generally something I love, I probably streamlined the workflow a bit better. So over time, I've got a bit better at the promo and the setting up and kind of maybe knowing how to approach the topics, because I've narrowed down what I want out of the episode a bit more, rather than it just being quite open in terms of we'll just talk about whatever comes up. Right. Yeah, that's probably the biggest.
Do you I just had a question that just left my brain right now as I was about to say that. It was really about the process. Like, would you mind kind of digging into how you decide who's going to be on the show, how you approach them, even like the gear that you're using on your end? Because I think those are questions a lot of people are going to have, like how, what do I need to get started? Can I get started with what I have? Like, how are you actually putting this together?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So in terms of when I started out, and I'll go with the gear one first, because I think that one's quite important. I knew that it was a podcast, even though it was live stream. So I was like, audio is important. So
yes,
the only thing I bought, because again, I didn't know if I would like it, I didn't know if it would last, I didn't know if I would still have guests to come on, and because of that, I didn't want to spend too much. So YouTube research in terms of what mic, and I bought a mic. It was £60, and that was the only thing I bought for it.
Which mic was it?
I bought the Samsung Q2U.
Cool. I was sure that's what it was, but I was hoping that's what you're going to recommend.
Yes.
It's XLR USB. It's super popular.
Yes, it was absolutely perfect. It was probably slightly before, maybe it went out of stock for a while, but I was like, yes, I have a laptop, so I can plug it straight in. It's got some future proofing, because yes, it has an XLR. No, I don't know what that is right now, but maybe one day I'll need it. It came with a stand, and it came with a pop filter. No, the whatever that's
Windscreen.
called. Thank you. The windscreen. I'm not very technical when it comes to audio.
That's great. I think that's what makes it accessible.
Yes. So I was like, okay, Mike, I didn't have a boom arm or anything like that. It came with a little stand. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to use the webcam that's built in. It is what it is. So since then, I'll be honest, I haven't really progressed in terms of gear. The only things that I have bought are 2 lights. And I bought them because I figured I kind of want to venture into YouTube too. So it was a joint thing. I think that was the only thing I bought. So the lights that I've got, one is a £30 LED panel thing. And
Gotcha, the thing.
yes, the thing. Very technical here. And the other is a Godox, the SL60W.
Yeah, that's another super popular one that's also budget friendly.
Yes. Now, the only thing I want to flag is I had zero idea what I was doing with lighting. So I had all this stuff for maybe 2 months. The lights, I mean, and I couldn't get it to give the look I wanted. So they were just sitting there. So don't just buy gear for the sake of it, is I guess what I'm saying. You need to know what you're doing with it. It wasn't until somebody jumped on a Zoom call with me very, very kindly and helped me figure out what I was doing. And yeah, that is my gear. That's it. Oh, and a boom arm. That happened along the way.
So that's a very accessible setup then for anyone who's getting started. But now, more importantly, I guess, that you got a good setup, the content.
Yes.
So in my case, I didn't know who to approach, didn't know how to approach people. So I was like, I will just go talk to myself. I'll lock myself in a room and talk for an hour once a week, and that will be my show. But you took the opposite approach where you're like, every week I'm going to have somebody new and interesting come on. So how did you start asking people? How do you approach them? I know this because I've been fortunate enough to be on the receiving end of like the organizational structure, but I nobody does it as good. I mean, the one person that pops into my head is Jared Spink from The Hive, who I think might be on your show at some point too. He's also incredibly organized. But beyond that, it's like you get these messages from people that are like, hey, I have a podcast. Like, I'd love for you to come on and hang out. It'll be a great time. And I'm like, that sounds fun. And if I could freeze time, I would love to do that. I'm sure I could sit down with someone and we'll just have a great time. I don't have the time for that. I learned early on I would do, oh, sure, like I'll do your podcast. And then you talk to someone and it's like halfway through the episode almost stops and they're just like, oh, it's just like they cancel the idea halfway through because they had no idea what they're doing. No. And you're just like, maybe this wasn't, because the podcast is an hour, which isn't that long, but you got to get ready for it. You got to plan around it. You got there's prep on your end if you want to be a good guest. And I just decided that it was better to put that energy into my own stuff. So it's not that I don't want to be on other shows, but I want to trust the person.
Yes.
If I'm going to invest the time. And you're very good at making yourself trustworthy to people with their time. So let's dive into your process for reaching out to someone to the point where now they're on your show.
Sure. Okay. That's cool. Firstly, again, very kind words. I really appreciate that. It's weird that that's come up a couple of times because from my end, I'm not doing anything that I didn't think anybody else was doing. I thought I was just doing the done thing. Like that to me felt natural. And at the end of the day, I'm asking somebody else to do me a favor. So like I need to make it as easy and as frictionless as possible. And
I feel guilty that you're here right now because I had to ask you, like, did you spend your Saturday? Like,
you
I have the guilt.
Me?
Don't worry.
I am. I still can't believe this is actually happening. In terms of my very first guests, and I was thinking, who am I going to get on? Like, how am I going to find some people? I was actually in an Instagram group or something with a couple of, I say a couple, I don't know, 10, 15 people that were on a course that I was doing. And I put on there, I was like, guys, had a bit of a crazy idea. I'm going to start a podcast. Any of you guys want to be on it? Because I knew that they had some kind of side hustles. And I was very grateful that, 3 or 4 of them actually ended up being on the show and were totally up for it. It was also around the same time that I started a Twitter account. I'm not particularly social, as I have said earlier, and I didn't really do social media, but I started a Twitter account specifically to tell Gary Vee I loved him.
Nice.
Yeah. But what a great thing that is, because Twitter turns out is the most amazing thing ever and has led me
I was slow to the game as well, because I was like, I don't understand how this works. I don't know what's happening. I don't need another thing to check every day.
Yes.
But it's the easiest way to just sort of be in conversations with people and to make people accessible and to make yourself accessible. It's kind of magical.
Yes. And you can speak to people that you never would have. And that's why I don't really like Instagram. I'm not a creative person, and that whole photos thing, it just doesn't work for me. Yes, I'm on it, but I don't get it. And Facebook is apparently for the
that's
kids.
Just a nightmare.
Yeah, it's just
we can just
yeah, okay. I'm glad we agree on
steer
that.
clear.
Yeah. So yeah, it just kind of, a couple of people on Twitter who are also Gary Vee fans just kind of said, hey, that's cool, saw a couple of the posts, and some of them were totally up for it. And that's how it started. And that's probably how I had my first maybe 6 or 7 people on the show. And then I'd asked a couple of my friends. So I had a PT, my PT came on very kindly, and somebody I work with, they came on. So it just kind of started from there. And that's probably around the time I was like, hang on, I could probably ask some of my favorites here. Like, I've got nothing to lose. And that's probably around the time I reached out to you, not even expecting you to even have read the message. But I was like, you know something, I can't not try. I'm going to really beat myself up if I don't try. And it happened, and my mind was blown, and I'm still.
But that, I mean, I don't know if that was if I was one of the first that you kind of reached out of that, kind of reaching out from your inner circle. You got like the people you're more comfortable reaching out with, and the people you're basically cold calling and like, hey, this is who I am. And then since then, I mean, you've reached out to obviously, like, you know, you had Heather, my wife, on, which that was an amazing episode. Like, I was so sad when it was over because it was such a great conversation. But there's stuff too, because right after you had me on the next week, you had Gerald Undone, who's like one of the legends in the YouTube camera photo video space.
Yeah.
And that's cool. You know, he has a very large following, and I imagine he gets lots of requests. How did you pull that off?
Yeah, still wondering that myself. So as we were coming towards, again, what I now call season 1, I hadn't planned to do seasons or anything like that, but having reached out to yourself, the timing just worked. I'd reached out to another one of my favorites, Chris Lawley, and Ali Abdal. And they kind of all happened around, you guys all happened around the same time. So I was like, okay, season 2, this is going to be YouTube focused, and this is going to be kind of tech people. And I'm not going to lie, when a couple of you said yes, I was like, hang on, this is a thing. This actually could work here, okay? So I've got nothing to lose. It's a message. So I guess it's people I follow, and in that tech sphere, I love tech anyway. I spend all my time on YouTube watching tech videos or productivity videos. They're the only 2 genres I kind of delve into.
I get it.
Right? It's just life. And as you speak to people, you see other people. And yeah, the whole Gerald Undone thing was mind-blowing. It happened in the space of 24 hours. So, honest to God, I happened to have a cancellation that week, so I didn't have a Tuesday guest. And I was like, okay, cool, week off. Monday night, I was like, right, I kind of maybe every so often send a batch of 4 or 5 messages. On the off chance that they all come in, I don't want everyone to want the same date or anything. But I have a huge list of people I would absolutely love on the show. So there's no shortage of people. It's just a case of, okay, I'll fire some messages off. About 7 o'clock, I fired him an email. And within about half an hour, I'd say, I got a response. And like, you know, one of those double take moments. I was like, no, wait, huh? No,
right.
Shut up. And I read it. And not only that, but he was totally up for it. And he said, okay, and I can't remember exactly, but I think he was busy. And I was like, I knew I had the next day free, but I was like, well, that's a too tight turnaround. But I knew I was busy for the next 3 episodes or something. So I was like, okay, well, you know, you're busy. What about next month? And he was like, no. I'm more than happy to fit it in. I was like, okay. He was like, what dates have you got? And I was like, tomorrow and I can't remember what the alternative was. But he's like, nope, let's do tomorrow. And I was like, oh, and this is like now 9 o'clock, 9:30 or something. And I'm like, okay, so now major panic is set in because I am so not ready. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. This is amazing. He emailed back to 100% confirm at like 11. So I'd gone to bed because I'm an old lady and saw it in the morning. And I was literally gobsmacked. I was like, oh my God, this is happening. So then it was a case of just doing the prep, the promos, getting everything sorted, getting everything done. He was legitimately amazing. He not only liked it, he shared it on his Twitter, he shared it on his Instagram. He came on, he was super nice. And yeah, he was the other person that mentioned towards the end about the email. And this was when I was like, really? What is in my email? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's, so the thing I can equate it to is, as a teacher, I've been very hard on myself. I know I could do better and this, that, and the other thing. And I was talking to last school year, before the world shut down, I was talking to one of our administrators who used to be a teacher up until a couple years ago for a long time, then became an administrative role. And, I was kind of talking about, I'm worried about this and that and whatever. And she was like, the thing I have learned since becoming an administrator is that I didn't give myself enough credit when I was in the classroom. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, there's things you're doing that you think are the bare minimum, that you're taking for granted, that you just assume everyone else does. And let me tell you, not everyone else is doing those things. And I think it's the same thing where you're just like, of course, this is how I'm going to handle this. This makes sense. This is how you would do it. And it's just shocking that is not the case for most of the time. And it really stands out when you kind of connect with someone in that way. And it makes an absolutely huge difference in the overall process. So hopefully that just lets you bring on more and more and more people that you admire in future episodes.
Let's hope so. If anyone's listening to this and they think, oh, I wonder what that email's about, you know where I am.
There you go. And all the contact info is in the show notes down below. So I am curious though, because you're doing seasons.
Yes.
How did you you kind of said you weren't planning to, and I guess it was sort of based on the guests and the topic, but how did you decide to split your show into seasons, and how long do you think season 2 will run, and will there be a season 3?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I obviously had no idea. At the beginning, I was just like, let it run. It's completely random people, so there's no segmentation. But like I said, I started getting tech YouTubers on, and I was like, this is a thing, and this is something that really not to say that I wasn't having fun talking to the other people, but I was like, this is something I genuinely am interested in, and kind of. As much as my audio skills are terrible, I do love tech. So I was like, this is so natural to me, and I'm watching the content of the people I'm talking to anyway. So it's such a natural conversation, and I'm genuinely really interested in what they're doing and what they're talking about, and I can kind of just sit here and talk, Apple Macs with somebody or something. So I was like,
right.
This is great. But I was like, I want to close the loop then, because season 1 was nothing like that. Apart from one episode, which I might redo or something maybe. But it was very, very different. So I was like, this is the timing fell right that Chris, yourself, Ali were all kind of bunched together. And I was like, okay, it's time to cut it. Let's do it. And I have no idea if there'll be a season 3. I'm toying with this idea because, like I said, it's either tech or productivity, and there's a lot of productivity people that I would love to have on as well. So whether I do a bunch of tech and then a productivity season, I'm not sure, because I'm also not sure what the audience likes. Again, I don't know if they're here for the tech YouTubers because that's who they watch, and therefore I'm more than happy to go on. There's enough of them.
Right.
Or it's a case of just actually we're interested in people's YouTube journeys, and that might dictate it.
Well, I'm curious because I appreciate your concern for the audience, because obviously that matters, and when you just start out with something, there is no audience and you have to keep consistent, you build it, and it happens very slowly over time. But I'm curious because you've talked about what you're interested in. And if you go through your channel, it's mostly podcast episodes, but there's also a few other interviews, and there are at least the one, which is just like a YouTube tech video. And so I'm curious what you're do you consider yourself, or does it even matter? Are you a podcaster? Are you a YouTuber? Are you both? Do you have other ideas or goals, or what do you want to be? Maybe, I don't know.
When I grow up.
Imagine everything. Yeah, what do you want to be when you grow up? YouTube, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to phrase it. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I'm still figuring it out, but I think I have a little bit more clarity. I don't consider myself as a true traditional podcaster, so it does sound weird. And it still sounds nuts to say, hey, I've got a podcast, but
it is fun.
It's cool, right? So I say always, clearly YouTube hasn't been around always, but let's call it the last, 5, 6, 7 years, wanted to be a YouTuber. I kind of look at you guys and I'm like, that's what I want to be doing. I can do this. Like, why am I not doing this? Really, I want to be a YouTuber under it all, which is why there is one tech video. Yeah, that took a lot of effort.
So let me just stop right there.
Yep.
Because you said you guys here, and I'm over here like, who? Because I'm just here being me, because I had the exact same journey of years and years and years of sitting around and wanting to do it, and then finally getting out of my own way to do it. And I can speak from where I'm at in my journey. You are very much one of us, and I am one of us, and it does not matter. So you're in the club. Just accept it and don the crown of YouTuber.
I would love to take that crown and be part of that club. It's all I've ever wanted, Tom.
You have a legit channel with over 30 videos because the podcast you have a thriving, active YouTube channel that you're constantly working on and growing. I mean, that is a very small percentage of people. I don't know if you knew this. Actually, I was on a podcast earlier this week with Buzzsprout, like the podcast hosting platform.
Oh, yeah.
And they were diving into analytics. It was super fun. And what I learned was that if you upload a podcast episode and within the first 7 days that episode gets 28 downloads, you're in the top 50% of podcasts.
No.
Yes. Because, I mean, podcasting numbers are not the same as YouTube numbers, and, people don't understand that. But people look at their podcasts and they go, oh, like, I guess I'm just a podcast. My episode got 20 downloads or 80 downloads or something. And it's like, actually, aside from the fact most people don't have this at all, and then some people start and then they barely start anything, you have something that's there. And so it's very cliche to say it's not about the numbers, but in a very big way, it's not about the numbers. And the numbers aren't even the full story, because of everybody sees the big one. The Joe Rogan Experience gets million of views. Yeah, sure. But most don't. And literally 28 episodes puts you in the top 50%. I know the top 1% was like 3,000 episodes, but the top 5% was like 300 down. Like, it was very accessible to get into, like, I'm in the top level of downloads.
Wow.
So I want to make sure you're giving yourself that credit there. And the reason I also ask is because, and I mean this in a positive way, but oftentimes when I listen to your show, I feel like there is kind of this ulterior motive there. But let me explain. I don't know how else to phrase this other than that. I don't know if you've ever called them this, but I call them selfish questions. Where I know you did it during our episode. I know you've done it during, I think mostly during season 2. But you will say you'll be interviewing someone on your show, and you'll say, I just have one more question for me. Like, for me, I want to know. For me, I want to know this. Yeah. And I call those selfish because I almost feel like there's a guilt on your end when you're asking these questions.
Yep.
So first, can you tell me about, like, I don't know what you call them or how you reference them, but you're nodding your head, so I know you know what I'm talking about. Why do you ask selfish questions? What are some of them? Like, what is the goal behind them?
So none of them are probably going to pop into my head right now, but I guess the idea is that they're conversations that I think, the way I look at it is, if I'm speaking to someone like yourself or like Ali or Gerald, I'm like, this is a great conversation for me to learn something off you guys. You guys have so much like experience, and you know what you're doing, and you've been through this journey, and like, why wouldn't you? Like, that's just such a great thing to do, to learn from someone who's already been through it. And that is a valuable conversation for other people to listen to as well. So why not put that into the world? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. But every so often it's like, okay, I have the audience in the back of my head, and I'm probably naturally asking what they are thinking. But then I'm like, hang on, this is like, Tom, why don't, I've got a tech question. Tom, I really need your help. And I don't want to seem like weird and ask you afterwards and make you think that I'm only talking to you so I can ask you a question. So I'll roll it up in the show. And it could be that somebody else wants to know the answer, but I'll be like, I just need a little help. Do you mind?
Those are some of my favorite questions, is why I bring it up. And I think because they're so, everyone can ask, like, obviously I needed to start today's show by saying, who are you and what do you do? So that people who might not be familiar have an idea of who they're listening to. But then getting into the, like, especially, as it's a repeat thing. So if I watch one of your podcasts, I might not catch on as much. But as I watch a few, now I'm watching this person and their journey. And it's not only are you asking a question that, like, I might have as a listener, but also it's fascinating to, like, see someone actively try to improve and figure things out and move and grow and get better at stuff. And so every time I hear the little disclaimer pop up, I know it's going to end up being like an interesting question. But I haven't heard, that's just a thing that seems so unique to, and maybe if you want to call it like social awkwardness or whatever, which, trust me, plenty of people on YouTube relate to, or podcasts. We're not all the confident, cool kids.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, but those questions, I love them because they tend to be so authentic and so specific and so interesting. I just love, it's like you're just watching someone figure it out, and that does make it all accessible, because then you're like, oh, right. I feel like it's such a champion for someone who wants to make something. Then it's just such a good example to watch. So
that's super cool to know, because I'm always like, oh, I feel like the other person's doing an eye roll, and I'm like, oh, I was waiting for this to happen.
I did want to point out too, it's not just about having your show and reaching out to people and getting them there, but you're really good at, like you mentioned, promo and press and follow-up and preparation. You don't have to you can go into as much detail as you want, but can you kind of give us an insight into your process for all those other things that I think are often overlooked?
Yeah, sure. I apologize in advance if I forget something. I'm not trying to, like, not tell you. I just have an awful memory.
You can keep your secrets. If you have a trade secret and you don't want to let the recipe out, that's okay.
Under lock and key. No. Okay. So I guess me and Heather were talking about this. I love Notion. I'm also the kind of person that loves using, like, I'll see a piece of software or a piece of tech and I want to find a use for something cool rather than, oh, I'm doing something, I need to go and find something cool. So I use Notion as my database, and it's just a great hub. So effectively, I'll have a list of people that I like anyways in there, and they have their own page with, like, a few links and things, a personal CRM or whatever. And then when the podcast comes up, there's a podcast database. I get to link the two together. So I'm like, okay, great. Tom's coming on the show. I've reached out to him. It'll go through a little Kanban board. So it'll have its stages, and it'll say, okay, idea, Tom. Right. I fired off an email to him, moves along to the, messaged.
Yeah, he said no, he's too good for this. So moving.
Then it goes into the decline box. No. Actually, just on that, people are quite nice, actually, when they do reply and they can't do it. They're normally like, I just appreciate a nice response. Like, it's just nice. Yes, I'm not expecting every single person to do it, but for someone to just reach out and say, it's not the right time, or it just doesn't fit for me, that's totally cool. So anyway, so it then goes into the email box. I'll then, sorry if this is long and boring, by the way.
No, I think this is like so useful for someone who wants to do this kind of thing.
Cool. Okay. I will carry on and stop me when I get too boring. So it then goes into the message box, and I'm sitting there going, please reply. If somebody gets back to me and it's a yes, then it's like, awesome, agreed. Right, now it's a case of we need to figure out times or whatever. Now I have a bit more structure, but obviously I understand that people's schedules are a bit like complicated and it doesn't always work. So now we've moved to a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. UK time. It's a case of, hey, this is the time I usually go live, but if that doesn't work for you, I'm more than happy to mix it. I work 9 to 5, but other than that, I can pretty much work around you, and I'm happy for that to be the case. 9 times out of 10, people are good with it. So then it goes into the booked phase. So I'm like, okay, we've got that, and I'm like, okay, I will now send you an email, a follow-up email. Sorry, the only other thing to say is I don't email everybody because I don't always have people's email addresses. So it could be a Twitter message or whatever, but some kind of contact. But that information is the same. To give them an overview of what the podcast is, what I'm asking from them, and kind of what my thoughts are. And then it's a case of, arrange the dates. Dates are agreed. And it's like, okay, I'll send you a follow-up email just to reconfirm what we've talked about. I know people are busy and they might have forgotten and, they've got all sorts of things going on. So it's a case of, awesome, we're booked in for X. Here's the platform I use. Here's a bit more about the format. So StreamYard, we'll kind of do this usual spiel in terms of, I want to know about your journey and things. Then I'll go into... depending on how late or early I am with the email, you say I'm organized, but I'm all over the place with timings.
At least outwardly, it looks very organized.
Excellent. If I'm prepared, I'll do a promo there and then, a quick mock-up to say, okay, I've pulled a couple of pictures. I've done a brief bio based on what I can see and my thoughts. Do you want to scan over it? Let me know if you want to make any changes. If not, I'll send them a follow-up email and just say, look, I haven't got a promo yet, but I will get it out to you. I should probably do more promos, but I tend to go out 24 hours before. So 1 to 2 days before, I'll set up the actual stream in StreamYard. I'll fire off an email to give the guests their link and say, just confirming, are we still good? If so, here's the link. Here's any StreamYard spiel you might need to know if you've never used it before. A reminder that these are the platforms we're going to go out to, and I will tag you on my 2 posts to Twitter and Instagram when I do it. And again, it's a standard template. It's obviously adjusted to the person. don't just fire off the same generic email. Everything gets adjusted depending on who I'm talking to and the conversations that have happened. And then it's a case of, up on Twitter, up on Instagram, tag them. So obviously Twitter, I have more of the YouTube thumbnail. Instagram is more of the square. So 2 different things. Mm-hmm. Instagram has the bio attached to it. Twitter doesn't. But then I'll go back out on Twitter to say, once the stream is live and the YouTube link has been generated, I'll put another post. I feel like I can post more promos on Twitter because that's the kind of platform it is. Whereas Instagram is just more of a 24 hours before. I'll throw a reminder on there and just tag the person. And basically, if they want to share it, they can share it. If they don't, they don't. I don't feel like it doesn't bother me either way. It's totally up to them. Again, they're doing me a favor by joining me.
But you're doing such a good job of providing, it makes it so easy when you have all these resources. I mean, how could they not just want to like push a button to share or retweet or whatever? Like it's... You make it so easy that I think that is absolutely going to help, and it's going to bring in other people's audiences and other attention and stuff. I'm so impressed by this process. It's so good. Before we wrap up, I have a few selfish questions that I would like to ask that I'm just curious about. So when you send out your emails, like, I don't know if you have like a decline ratio, because obviously not everyone can do it. So I don't know, out of every 5 or 10 people you ask, how many say yes or no? I've
only had a couple of people say no. More often they don't reply. So, but again, I'm not expecting them. I'm talking like, tech YouTubers that they might not have seen it. They might not have, for whatever reason, which I totally understand. But I probably have a much higher success rate than one would expect.
That's so at least over 50% then.
Yes. Yeah. Most people are really good. And they will get back to me and say, yeah, sure. Not everything is booked there and then. But again, you will be surprised at the amount of people that actually want to do things like this and are actually appreciative that you've asked them and feel good. And I'm like, what do you mean, thank you? I'm thanking you.
I mean, I think it does go both ways, because you're like, oh my gosh, I got this guest who's amazing. But it is also completely flattering to have somebody say, hey, I like what you're doing enough to like bring you into my world here. So, that's always nice when both parties feel that same way. Do you can not share this if you want, but do you have a couple of people that are like your dream, or not even dream, but just they'd be so excited to have on your show?
So okay. So in terms of like favorite YouTubers, I've pretty much done pretty well in terms of who I'd have on and my favorites. So you guys are the ones that the channels I watch the most. So I've pretty much ticked those boxes. But I think my ultimate. Well, the 2 people that spring to mind are Matt Diavella and Thomas Frank.
I don't know Thomas Frank.
Productivity. Like, yeah.
I'm sure Heather knows that.
Yes, that kind of genre. He is awesome. And I suppose maybe like an ultimate is Gary V, right? Just to say, this is probably because of you, right?
Right. Yeah, that would be a good one.
Oh, I have one more. Sorry, I lied. Sarah Dici.
Oh, I feel like she would be quite accessible because who knows? I don't know, but like,
if you know her,
I feel
Toma.
like these are real. I have no contact. But I will say this was a couple of years ago, and it kind of goes to your point of reaching out to people. So Matt Diavella, his YouTube channel's up at like 3 or 4 million now at this point. Like he's pretty big. This was maybe at the start of 2019. I got really into his podcast, which is actually, now that I think about it, the same time I started my podcast. There had to be a reason. There has to be an overlap there. But there was one day I was on like a student trip for work, and basically I was just driving in my car all day and just sitting in my car waiting all day. And so I was just listening to like episode after episode, and I got so much good stuff out of it that I sent him a message, and I was so bad at messaging people. I was like, hey, like, I just want to say, like, this is so awesome. I learned so much. I really appreciate that you're doing, like, just, I wasn't asking for anything, just a kind of nice message. I sort of got it into my head. Same thing with YouTube comments. If I'm watching something or I'm thinking of someone and I have a positive thought about it, I feel like I should say that to them. I shouldn't just keep that in my brain because they might want to know this, even if they never see it. And he kind of the same thing you said with like Gerald. He like immediately responded and was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is so cool. Like checking out your channel. It's awesome. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And then like on his Twitter, like 2 days later, he shared like this little tutorial that I had made about like how to wrap your cables so they don't tangle. He's like, this is the best explanation of this process I've ever seen. I was like, this is like unreal. And I know like his audience was smaller at the time, so it was easier to pop out a little bit. But the point is, you really never know. I didn't expect any kind of response at all. And clearly, like, you never know where these things will go. And I have a feeling that if you keep doing what you're doing the way you're doing it, eventually, like, the tides might even turn where people are hoping to get booked with you on your show. And that becomes like, you know, if you ask them, like, whose show would you like to be on? They'd be like, I really want to be on Creators Campfire. I feel like that could very easily develop that reputation. Probably a lot more quickly than you think.
That would be the dream, and I've never even thought of that. That would be insane.
I think it'll happen if these were kind of my other selfish questions, which was kind of going into, would you ever be open, or how do you feel about like monetizing your channel, your podcast, your content? Because I always struggle with this, so I'm very curious.
Yeah, so I actually really, really like align with you on a lot of these views, and it's so nice to hear when you say some of these things, because I feel better about myself having these thoughts, because it's so like these days it's all about money. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't go onto YouTube to make money. That is, I'm now trying to venture in. I've kind of got my own separate channel with clips, and I want to do my own content. So that's the direction I want to go in. But it's definitely not the first thing. It's it would be cool if this can become monetized, right? Because then maybe I can quit my job and go full time at some point and put more into it. But that's definitely not the be all and end all. Again, with what you said about having sponsors or doing like sponsored stuff with the stuff you already use and genuinely like, that's different. I don't want to. The podcast seems, I don't know. I sway back and forth. When I started, I was like, no, I don't want to sponsor it, because I'm the kind of person that does get annoyed when ads come up, and I'm like, just get to it. But again, I've heard some ads like Thomas Frank's or Ali Abdal's podcast that are really quick. It's, you know what it is. It's 10 seconds. It's always 10 seconds. It's not a big deal. Like, I know they use it, and it's okay, and it's something they genuinely use. So if, for example, Notion reached out and said, do you want to do something? I'd be like, yes, I use your stuff every single day. I genuinely love it, and I recommend it to everybody anyways. And I think that's exactly kind of your approach, and I completely... Yeah,
that's where I've been, which also has resulted in very few sponsorship. But it is, I will say, I don't want to jinx it, but there's been more recently like companies and organizations reaching out that I do align with, that I have more of an opportunity with, like Buzzsprout, the podcast hosting one, is like, I was invited to join their creator program, which is super cool. And they're like, if you have ideas for sponsored content, let us know. I'm like, this makes sense. Sweetwater Sound, which is like it's kind of like the B&H Photo, but for mainly audio gear. I've used them forever. And they're like, hey, like you could reach out if you have ideas for stuff. Like, yeah, you can join our like affiliate program or whatever. But if you want, if you want to do giveaways on your channel, if you want to do that, like let us know. And that's where I was like, oh, so the sponsorship could also be not just me reading an ad, but it could enable me to do something that I couldn't do otherwise. So like, going back to Gerald Undone, I know Storyblocks is a huge sponsor for him, but that's also how he does the Studios Undone series, like travel and airfare and like affords those things. So it could, I'm trying personally to like think of not just, I don't want to just read an ad or anything, like I really don't, but what if there's an idea that I just can't do and I legitimately need like someone to sponsor the idea so that it could get done? That could be a fun thing to do. But you touched on, it was going to be my last selfish question, and that was, if the opportunity ever arose, would you consider like being a full-time content creator?
Yes.
You would? You seem to jump on that.
Yeah, I don't know. And I can't work out if I don't think it's a 9 to 5. It's not a routine that I have an issue with. I love routines. But the more I've been thinking about it recently, the more I'm like, it's not for me, as in like, it doesn't feel, it's not for me, like not the world is for me. It's just, it doesn't quite have that same, it doesn't mean as much. I'm like, what difference am I really making? I'm just another cog in this kind of wheel. And I don't feel like I'm making a difference. Like anyone could do what I'm doing, right? It's not a big thing. Whereas if I'm putting my own content out into the world and putting my own spin on things, that just seems a lot more fun.
That's the best way I've heard that phrase, because I was like, yes, that's exactly how I feel. But I've never been able to articulate that as well. And I think that's the perfect way. And I'm also interested because, like, it's easy for someone to be 18 years old and be like, yeah, I want to be a content creator. It's like, yeah, of course, you have nothing to lose. Like you have nothing, like, sure. But you have a career, you have an education, you have all the things where it's like, I've sort of done what I'm supposed to do and everything is going really, really well. That I relate to that very much, but you still have this itch of like, what if, and whether it's like, making a bigger impact or just doing something that's investing in you specifically, or, just living your life on your terms. Like I talked a couple episodes ago about, if I were to ever be able to do something like this full time, I would want to structure it in a way that I had a 4-day work week, just because I feel like that would, like, having 3 days off every week to not think about work stuff, to just be a person out in the world, would make me so much better at the 4 days that I was at work. And that'll never happen in the, the 9 to 5, so to speak, world. So it's like these little things of, you can potentially build this whole life for yourself that is on your own terms. And that, and going back to Matt D'Avella, he's someone I reference a lot, because back when he was like building his thing up, he kind of hit a point where he was like, I want to make $56,000 a year. That's what I need. Which is this many people signing up on Patreon, this much from, I didn't even think he was doing YouTube ads. I think it was all Patreon. And it's like, that's a pretty modest goal. Like, that's a very achievable goal. I mean, my personal goals are a little loftier than that, but not by much, honestly. Like, you don't need to be like, I'm going to make $10 million this year and I'm just going to grow. And I need to hire a team of people. Like, it can be much more about just what you want out of your life while you have the time, right?
Yes. Like, if I could do content creation full time for what I'm getting paid at work right now, I'd snap someone's like hand off, bite someone's hand off for that.
No question.
Yeah, it would just like, why would I do that when I could be getting paid the same thing? I don't have big money goals. Obviously, money is great. Like, I'm not knocking it. If someone wants to pay me a crap load, I'm not going to say no. But I'm happy with my current lifestyle, and I'm happy with where I am in that respect. So yeah, if I can get the same and do something like this, because the amount I'm learning through this just feels, and it could be because it's new and therefore the learning curve is deep, but it's just, there's so much to learn that I wouldn't necessarily, they're different skills versus what I am doing in my job. And again, I love admin. So whether I'd go part-time, 3 hours a day just to get my fix of being in an office, I don't know, but probably not if I could. But
you could probably do your own admin work, and it would take up enough time. Well, I wish you the best of luck on that journey. I kind of feel like maybe in a year or so, I might have to like try to wedge my way into your email inbox to ask for an update, but it's going to be very, very crowded, and maybe it's okay if you have to say
Are
no.
you kidding me, Tom?
I'm so excited though to see where you go. If is there anything before we wrap up, anything that last thing you want to share, or a special place people want to reach out and like check out some of your work or anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I suppose so. So guys, like, find me on Twitter is probably the best place. I am starting my main YouTube channel. So if you want to see me grow and probably fail several times and then try and grow again, that's where you could find me. But otherwise, I suppose the only thing I probably haven't mentioned is female creators and like getting them a bit, like, I want to focus on that a bit more, especially someone who sees like a lot of males in the tech world. It's like, hang on, there's females like tech too, hence like Sarah Dici and things, and like Crystal Laura or Tech Me Out. There's some like really, really cool people out there, and I just want to, and sorry, I'm forgetting people. I just want to, if I could bring more of that, because all of my tech guests have been male, that would be amazing. So that would be my only point. So if there are like girls, women out there that are just like, no, this sphere is for men, please, it's not, do it. Just do it. That's probably all I got.
I can't think of a better note to go out on. So thank you again so much for spending your time with me. And links to everything are down in the show notes. So please be sure to go out and send Bhav some love and some support. And I can't wait to see where you go on your journey from here. So thanks for spending your time. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.